Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Welcome to STEM NOLA at Home. It's another great day for us to do this. It's now May, so we've been doing this over a year now. I had the pleasure of, Facebook always bringing stuff up and showing you what you did a year ago. And like 2 weeks ago, I was just flipping through my Facebook feed, and it popped up that we had our first STEM NOLA at Home. And, people say, how long are you going to keep this going? I said, we're going to keep this going as long as there's people out there willing to tune in and get the lessons that we have to offer. My name is Dr. Calvin Mackey. And once again, I find it an honor to come into your home and bring parents, your scholars, some fundamentals about STEM. I'm very excited about today because a lot is happening. Today, we are studying force in motion. And force in motion is really the basic unit of pretty much engineering. If you're going to study engineering, you got to study force in motion because that's how stuff moves. If it's not moving, then the sum of the forces equals zero. If it is moving, then the sum of the forces are unbalanced, give rise to motion, and everything else emanates from there. And when you study force in motion, you look at the laws of force in motion. You look at the laws that we use, or the equations that we use to look at the motion of fluid is the same laws that we use to look at the motion of dollars on Wall Street. So once you get a basic fundamental understanding of what's happening, you can begin to apply to many different things. Now, parents, we do this, and I'm also excited because the volunteer we have today is actually a former STEM NOLA student. So an engineer, so we're very excited. Now, parents, we do this because 7 years ago, I had a first grader and a third grader, and my son asked me some questions. And what it led to is that I realized he wasn't being taught the basic fundamentals of phenomena. So we started going into the garage, doing all of these hands-on activities. And 7 years later, we've engaged over 65,000 K-12 students, over 17,000 families, and over 1,500 STEM professionals and college students. And one thing that I'm very proud of is that we've put over $1 million in the hands of college students as interns, as we hire them, train them, and then deploy them out into the community to engage our young people. Also, parents, we know in the 21st century, technology is going to be paramount. I was talking to a CEO of a major technology corporation last week, and he said, we had a 10-year technology plan, but COVID has expedited that and pushed that within 1 year. So now things that we thought was going to happen over the next 10 years, it really has happened in the last 15 months because companies had to adjust to this COVID environment. And there's no going back. So our kids and our lives will forever be inundated by science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And today the CDC announced that if you're fully vaccinated, we no longer have to wear the mask when we're in certain environments. I say congratulations to the STEM community because for 15 months, we were waiting around for scientists, technologists, engineers, and mathematicians to actually save the world. And at the end of the day, when we look at it, you're going to see that all of those disciplines played a role in developing a vaccine that we have now that's going to get us back to the life as we know it. Parents, I was talking about technology, and I want you to know, in the 21st century, young people, either you're training yourself from the neck up or you're training yourself from the neck down. If you're training yourself from the neck down, your competition will be the automatic machine. And the automatic machine is comparable to slave labor. I just did a speech about how in 1944 they created the automatic cotton picker. The automatic cotton picker was the first mechanization of agriculture that actually freed African Americans from a Jim Crow sharecropping economy. And the question after the speech was, what is the automatic cotton picker of today? And the automatic cotton picker of today that's going to disenfranchise many workers and going to force them to go out and find a new way of life or find a new way of earning a living is the automatic machine, the robot. What I have before me is a humanoid. And a humanoid is a robot that tries to act like a human. This robot name is Alpha. And Alpha can do many of the actions that a human can do. Like Alpha can do push-ups. Alpha can actually show off. And like me, after getting off my Peloton, Alpha takes her time getting up. And if you think you're going to go into the entertainment industry and have it all to your own, and you're going to outdance Michael Jackson or Beyonce, guess what? Alpha can dance too. Alpha has servos. Everywhere where we have a joint, we have a servo motor, and our technology specialist, Barry, has programmed Alpha to do all these cool moves. And you can learn coding too. I went to a Consumer Electronics Show and had the pleasure of seeing Ubitech release their promo for a robot called Walker. And Walker stands about 5'5" and literally walks across the floor. And they estimate in 10 years, each one of us would be able to have our own servant doing things that we don't otherwise want to do. Right now, companies like Amazon are building warehouses with nothing but robots and machines and no humans. Parents, this is the 21st century, and this is why we got to train our children from the neck up to make sure that in the future, they will control the robots and the robots will not control them. That is the challenge before us. That's why we do this. And what we do at STEM NOLA is that we help you understand a basic phenomena so that when you go into the classroom and the teacher gives you the equations and the physics, you don't become intimidated and you understand how these equations relate to real life. So yeah, let's go learn some force and motion. Now, next up, I'm going to introduce you to a young man who I've known since third grade, Troy Prevost. Troy Prevost is a system design engineer for Lockheed Martin Corporation. He works on an F-35 fighter jet. And Troy graduated from Howard University with a BS in mechanical engineering. And Troy is going to speak to you about force and motion.
Thank you for the introduction, Dr. Mackey. Always a pleasure being around you in your program. Learned so much from you, and I'm sure everyone else has also. But since we talk about myself, yeah, I work for Lockheed Martin. That's the title, says system design engineer. And every day we're probably in some shape or form talking about forces in motion. So if you don't know, the F-35 is a military fighter jet, and we load many things on that, and we also add and subtract things from that airplane on a monthly basis, right? So if we want to add a new weapon or a new viewing system like a thermal scope or radar or anything like that, all those things have different weights involved. And if you know that there are four forces when it comes to flight, so there's thrust, drag, lift, and weight. And drag really, in the easiest form, in the most basic form, really opposes thrust. And then weight is going to really oppose lift. So if we add things, that means we're increasing our weight, which means it's going to be harder to lift up off the ground. So you always have to keep in mind how much the new things we want to bring onto the jet weigh versus how much power we want to expend from our engines, right? So, your engines can only expend so much power or extend so much thrust. So we kind of need to keep in mind for that every day. But every time someone has some cool idea, right? And it's like, yeah, this would be really cool on the jet and it's going to be fun and it's going to work really well for what we need to do. But then we also need to take into account how much that's going to weigh, how much that's going to affect our mission effectiveness. Since it's a fighter jet and it's for military actions, timing is very important. So we want to keep in mind that if it takes 30 seconds to get off the ground or 5 minutes to get off the ground, then it might not be as useful. So we kind of need to be as light as possible, but be able to hold and carry everything that we need for where it's deployed. So that's really the simple, I guess, the quick answer of where we need to go. If I know we are doing questions or anything, Dr. Mack, you want me to talk about anything more, but that's really the gist of what I get to do. I kind of work on adding new capabilities to the plane. On my team, we get to design certain things from the software side, and then there's other guys on the team that do things on the hardware side. So we talk with those guys if we're like, oh, this is going to have a safety impact or a weight impact, and so we have to decide if we can actually go through with this. You go through boards and everything, but in general, really, it's really important to keep in mind those four forces when it comes to flight. And forces in motion is something that you learn in high school, middle school, and in college. And sometimes it seems really simple, but those F equals ma and an object in motion stays in motion, Newton's third law, those come back in so much in the engineering field. So Even every day you see those things. So it's important to get to know them early so they can become second nature, especially if you plan to do anything in STEM, because forces and motion are things that you're going to use every day when you're driving your car. The friction is what allows you to stop and brake, right? So it's all those things come into play every day. And in my field, it's even more so important because when you're in the air, if you happen to fall down or anything, then there's a really dangerous situation for the pilot. You're gonna have to eject or something. So it's not as easy as on the ground where you're not really afraid of falling down, right? So it's really important to keep in mind the weight or the thrust power from the engines, weather conditions, and things like that. So it's kind of what I wanted to say to you guys. I don't know if there's anything more, but working in the aero industry is pretty fun in that aspect. It's just really different.
Troy, how was studying engineering?
Oh, so studying engineering. Engineering was it was fun at the same times, right? It's rewarding. There's definitely some moments where you're like pulling your hair out. You're like, oh my gosh, this class is so hard, but it's really fun. It was really fun. There's a lot of hands-on activities depending on the program. Right? I was mechanical, which I'm gonna say is the best, right? So those mechanical engineers are responsible for things like your cars, your planes, your trains. You really can do it all as long as something moves and the mechanical engineer is involved, right? There's also other engineers like civil, which work on street planning, bridges, chemical engineers, which go into oil industry or medical industry, and electricals and those kind of guys. But I loved engineering. Went to Howard University, as Dr. Mackey said. Really, engineering is physics based. So if you have a inclination for physics and you love that class, then do engineering. So I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed that major, and I don't regret making that decision. And you'll take classes maybe like statics or solid mechanics or something that really help you think how much is involved in your everyday life, right? Or thermodynamics is really the one that really opened my mind, right? So if you ever realize, like, if you ever look at your energy bill, which your parents might, your refrigerator is one of the things that really make your energy bill as high as it is, or your AC unit, because it's really hard to keep things cold, and that's something you learn about in a class like thermodynamics. And it's just learning that it's really hard to keep things cool when everything's generally warm. So it takes a lot of energy to do so. So it's really expensive to do that. And that I kind of understood that beforehand, but once I took thermal, I really understood it and tried to have a better understanding for energy efficiency. But in general, I
All right.
loved engineering. So
Thank you, Troy. I
appreciate
didn't
you.
actually teach a thesis, but you did good.
Sorry.
I knew you, look, social media give you up, man. I knew you was home. You didn't call me. You still owe me dinner. I'm proud of you. Next time in town, I got a nice restaurant picked out for you to buy me dinner.
Yeah, that was Mother's Day. It doesn't count.
I said next time. All right. Take care, Troy. So, before we bring up the instructor for the day, I want to do just a little activity about force and motion. Newton's has 3 laws. Newton's 3 laws are, what's the first? No, Newton's 3 laws are, first one is an object in motion will remain in motion unless acted upon by some force that's equal and opposite. It's almost like being on a football field, right? You see the little running back running and bam, when a big linebacker hit him, he goes the opposite way. Or when they do hit, if they weigh the same, if they have the same amount of momentum, they just stop, right? A body in motion will remain in motion unless acted upon by some force. And a body at rest will remain at rest unless acted upon by some force. The Newton's second law is force equals mass time acceleration. So if there's a force, is equal to mass time acceleration. If there's no acceleration, that means the sum of the forces is equal to 0 and a body is at rest. Got it? If the body is not at rest, that means the sum of the forces got to be unequal. And if they're unequal, the body is moving in the car and it's accelerating. And the third Newton's law is that uh, uh, the third law is that for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So if I hit this thing, bam, it hurt my hand. You know why? Because the the rail didn't move, but the force at which I hit the rail, it put that same force back to my hand. So if there's a brick wall in your car and you're going fast, bam, the reason why the car bends up, because engineers have designed the car to absorb the energy so that you don't get hurt. But that energy came from the fact that that wall put back into that car the same amount of force that that car put into the wall. And I mean, when you get that and really understand it, it's amazing because you understand how people break their bones. If you fall down to the ground based on your weight, you hit the ground with a certain amount of force. And that's the amount of force that the ground put back on your body. And that's why your bone snaps, right? So this whole thing of force and motion is also about energy too. And I'm gonna show you this. This is Newton's cradle. And Newton's cradle is a device to show us Newton's 3 laws, but also to show us like conservation of energy. So we have this ball, and we take this ball, or this sphere, and we pick it up. If I pick this sphere up, gravity is acting on it. It has weight, right? So it has a certain amount of mass. And it also has a force acting on it. The only reason it's not moving because I'm holding it, right? So we call this potential energy. The potential energy is the measure of the amount of work that a body has the potential of doing, the amount of energy that it has the potential to do. If I was to release this, potential energy turns into kinetic energy, which is energy in motion. Now you see these bodies, these balls, and these balls are not moving, right? This ball is not moving, but it has potential energy because we have gravity acting upon it. Now, if I let it go, watch what happens. Wow. Energy is neither created nor destroyed, but transferred. Now you see how the energy from this ball hits that ball and is transferred through these balls to that ball? Now, if we was in a vacuum, this would go on forever, but since there's friction due to gravity, it slows down. Now let's try 2 balls. If I take 2 balls and I drop them, what you think happens? The 3 balls are not moving. Watch this. Wow, you see how the force of these 2 balls is transferred, or the energy of the 2 balls is transferred through that middle ball to those 2 balls? Now check this one out. Now if I drop 3 balls, a body in motion will remain, a body at rest will remain at rest unless acted upon by some other force. So this is at rest. Wow. From each side, right? What you think will happen? Boom. See how the force comes in, collides in the middle and goes back out? Boom, bam, boom, bam. That blows my mind every time. Now watch this. What if I drop this one from this distance and I drop this one from this distance? Since this one is at a higher level than this one has a greater amount of force with it, thus a great amount of energy. Watch this. Chaos. That's what happened when a big car hits a little car. It's just chaos. Boo, 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 boo. This is Newton's cradle, and it allows us to visibly see Newton's laws and the conservation of energy, okay? Get you one of these. They got some little small ones that you can play with. When we go back live for STEM NOLA, we give all the kids, all the students a little Newton's cradle. So next up, with the lesson for Force and Motion today is our staff member, Director of Special Projects, Chantel Bolden. Chantel has been with STEM NOLA 4 or 5 years, and she has a Bachelor of Chemistry. She has a bachelor's degree in chemistry from Dillard University and a bachelor's in forensic science from Southern University at New Orleans. Chantel.
Hello, guys. My name is Chantel Bolden. I'm the Director of Special Projects with STEM NOLA. As Dr. Mackey said, I have a background in chemistry and forensic science, and today I'm going to walk you guys through a force in motion activity. So to go over our agenda, we are first going to review some vocabulary terms, go over a few objectives for the day, ask some activity questions, and then build our actual launcher. And I'll let you guys ask me some questions when we're finished. So we have 4 vocab terms that we're going to focus on today. Number 1 is tension force, and that is the force that is transmitted through a spring, rope, wire, or string when it's pulled tight by forces acting from opposite ends. So to put that into perspective, think of tug of war. When you have 2 teams pulling on each side, it's creating that tension and that force in the center. Newton's 3rd law of motion, we're going to use the example that Dr. Mackey just gave us with the Newton cradle. So with every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction, pulling one on each side. That energy is transferred through the 3 balls and transferred to the last one on the end. Term number 3 is elastic potential energy, and that is the energy stored in an object that is due to the force that is temporarily changes its shape, such as squishing or stretching. So think of jumping on a trampoline. When you go down, so does the trampoline, and then it propels you right back up to its original form. And our last one is kinetic energy, and that is the energy in the object that is due to its motion. So think of yourself. As long as you're in motion, you're expressing kinetic energy. So to see if you were paying attention, poll number 1. How many laws does Newton have? Is it he created science, there are 3 laws, or he had laws? I'll let you guys decide. Give you a few seconds. All right, that answer was Newton has 3 laws, and you all got it correct, so good job for you. So our objective for the day is you will understand the meaning of the terms force, Newton's first law of motion, potential energy, and kinetic energy, and apply all of them to the project correctly. And you will create a launcher that shows all of these vocab terms. So question number 2, what is our objective for the day? Is it biology, wind, or force and motion? See who's going to get it right. All right, you guys are also smart. Again, the topic of the day and the objective is force in motion. So as we're building our launcher today, I want you guys to focus on 3 questions, and I'm going to remember and ask you guys at the end, so make sure you pay attention. Number 1 is what form of energy is stored on the rubber bands as you pull back on the launcher? Number 2 is what kind of energy is exerted when the launcher shoots forward? And then the last is what is Newton's 3rd law of motion? So keep that in the back of your mind as we're building our launcher. And this is our launcher that we're going to be building today, and we're going to go ahead and get started by checking off our supplies and materials. So number 1, you will need a piece of cardboard, kind of like mine's here, which is white and brown on one side. You will also need 2 rubber bands, a pencil or marker, a piece of paper. I have colored yellow paper here. You will also need a ruler and some scissors or box cutter and glue stick. So while you guys are gathering your materials, I'll tell you a little bit about our launcher today. A launcher is simply a device that sends something as a rocket or a missile up into the air with force. And as you pull back on your launcher, it acts as a spring, which propels objects and shoot them forward into the air. So what happens is the tension in the rubber bands is what helps it go forward, as in that forward motion. And in these rubber bands, there is elastic potential energy. When you pull these rubber bands back and as they shoot forward, that kinetic energy comes into place while it's moving and propels your launcher. So we're going to go ahead and get started with our assembly. So take your cardboard, and we're going to start with your ruler, and I'm going to use my Sharpie today. So step 1 is we need to cut out a 3 by 4 inch piece of cardboard. Using my ruler, we're going to start with the very first mark on our ruler as a starting point and measure the 3 inch here, and then go 4 inches up. Now for my accuracy, I'm going to go ahead and complete my square. And then we're going to go ahead and cut it out with my scissors. If you are using a box cutter, please be careful. They are very sharp. And if you need adult assistance, please gather them right now. But to use my scissors, we're going to cut out my 3 by 4 inch rectangle. Let's draw that again. My board was a little thin. So let's use this side. You guys may finish before me, and that's okay. I'm just going to quickly catch up to where you are with my first cut. Alrighty, successfully cut piece number 1. We're gonna set that one to the side. I'll turn it on the brown so you can see. And then our next 2 pieces are gonna be a 2.5 by 3-inch rectangle. So again, starting at the very edge, we are going to measure 2.5 inches over, which is here on my ruler, and then 3 inches up. You're going to repeat this step twice. So you can have 2.5 by 3-inch rectangles for your assembly. Piece number 2, and then we need 1 more. Maybe safe here. Oh. And here we are. 1 3 by 4-inch piece, and then 2.5 by 3-inch squares. Now, for now, we're going to put our 2.5 by 3-inch squares to the side and focus on our 3 by 4-inch piece. And what we're going to do here is essentially create a T shape out of our large square by measuring 3/4 of an inch over and then 2.5 inches upward on both sides. So again, using your ruler, starting at that very first mark, your 3/4 inch will be the second to last line right before, well, the longest line right before your 1. And you want to do that on both sides and then go 2 inches upward to create your T shape. 2.5. Once we have that drawn, we're going to cut out up to the line and then over to create 2 tiny rectangles. So once you're done, you should have a T and 2 small rectangles. Now, put your T to the side and grab 1 of your 2.5 by 3-inch rectangles. What we want to do is turn it this way to where your 3 inches are on your vertical side and your 2.5 is on the horizontal. And we are going to take our 2 small rectangles and glue them perfectly onto the sides of our first half of our base. Using my glue stick, I'm going to add a little glue to both ends and use some pressure to make sure they are nice and secure on top. I will pause right here for a bit and let you guys catch up to where I am. Give you guys a few seconds to get your brackets in place on the first half of your base.
Repeat the T part, please. There's somebody touching.
Okay. While you guys get that, we'll go ahead and repeat the T shape. So with the 3 by 4-inch square, you want to measure 3 by 3/4 of an inch on each side and then 2.5 inches upward. And then cut out the sides to create a T, and then you'll end up with your 2 small rectangles on the side. Once you cut those small rectangles out, we want to place them on one of our 2.5 by 3 inch bases, just like this. If you need to add a little more glue to make it secure, go ahead and do that. And then we're gonna go ahead to our next step if everyone's ready. So the next step, we are going to take our second 2.5 by 3 inch rectangle, and we are going to draw a 1.5 inch square in the center that we are going to then cut out with our scissors. So first, we're going to measure our square in the center. So you want a 1.5 inch square right in the middle. And this is going to serve as your loading space for your launcher disc. And to safely cut that out with scissors, we are going to bend your cardboard, make a little slit here, and then go in to cut out our shape. This could get a little tricky, so if you need some help, do not be afraid to ask for adult assistance. I'm going to make my square a little bigger just to make sure my disc fits in. And then go ahead and cut it out. As perfect as I can get it. There we go. I'll give you guys a second to go ahead and get your squares nice and pretty and neat as you like. Once you've cut out your square, we're going to put it on top of the first part of our base to create our loading window right on top. So I'm going to take my glue to secure this in place. And press firmly down on top to make sure we have a nice tight fit. Our next step is to create our plunger within our launcher, and that's where the T shape comes in place. So to make sure I don't have any tension when inserting my T shape, because it will go into one of the holes that you created in the side of your launcher, I'm going to trim my sides down a little bit just for smoothness. Make sure we don't have any type of tension or friction when we are launching our disc. So just to test it out, you want it to insert and move really smoothly, just like that. Perfect. Next, with your launcher in place, we want to add our rubber bands. So with your 2 rubber bands, you are going to wrap one around each side of your launcher assembly. This step will help create the tension, that force tension that we mentioned earlier, that will act on your plunger to release your disc when we go to launch. If you need to add more glue to keep it in place, go ahead and do that to make sure it's nice, steady, and secure, but your rubber bands should hold that in place for you. So. Alrighty, now to make our disc. So remember that square that you had before? I hope you didn't toss it. Doesn't matter if it's pretty or not. We're gonna make it into a circle that fits perfectly into the loading disc of our launcher. So I'm gonna take my scrap piece of cardboard and cut out a nice circle to act as my disc. And because at STEM NOLA, we like to make things really pretty and colorful, is where my colored piece of yellow paper comes in. I am just going to make a nice circle to put on top of my launcher. And I hope you guys do the same thing too. And if you want to decorate it, that would be super cool to show us. Nice hefty amount of glue, and then place our yellow disc on top. This will also be really useful when you're launching and you lose it. That color might come in handy when you're trying to find your disc. So now that I have completely assembled my launching disc, I'm going to show you guys how we launch. What you want to do is take your disc, load it into the window of your launcher, and hold it with your thumb while you pull back on the plunger just a bit. Not so much to where it comes out of your opening, but just enough to get into your disc. And we are going to release. Let's try that again. Luckily, I have some backup discs. So one more time, and then there we go. Nice launch there. And I'm actually launching at my producer, so it's pretty fun. This is not a tool to torture your brothers and sisters, so do not launch at your family members. And if so, apologize after and be nice. So we will review our first opening questions that we did in the beginning. And that is question number 1. What form of energy is stored in the rubber bands when you pull the launcher backwards? Is it gravity, potential energy, or downward energy? See if you guys were paying attention. Give you a few more seconds to answer that first activity question. What kind of energy is in the rubber bands as you pull the launcher backwards? That answer is potential energy. Ha ha ha. Got you guys on a little tricky question. Question number 2. What kind of energy is exerted when the launcher shoots forward? So as we pull back on our plunger and it goes forward to release our disc, what kind of energy is stored? Is it A, gravity, B, kinetic energy, or C, downward energy? Trick question. I'll give you guys a few seconds to answer. All right, you guys were paying attention on that one. It was kinetic energy. Good for you. All right, last question. If you can remember with Dr. Mackey's intro about the Newton's cradle, what is Newton's third law of motion? Is it A, dropping things hurt, B, every action has an equal but opposite reaction, or C, what does gravity hold it in the air? See if you guys can get this one right. Remember, our first question was how many laws did we have? Now we want to know what's the third law. Ding, ding, ding. The answer is B. For every action, there is an equal but opposite reaction. So glad you guys paid attention on that one. All right. Thank you, guys. If you have any questions, please go ahead and drop them in the chat. And if you decorate and do your colorful launchers, please send us a picture at webinar@stemnola.com, as well as videos of you launching. Our next session is Thursday, May 20th at 4 p.m. And we will actually be hosting another event this Saturday in Baton Rouge, Buoyancy and Density, if you are local and want to sign up. But I will let Dr. Mackey, nope. Okay, so thank you guys so much for joining us today. I really enjoyed doing the live session with you, and I hope you enjoyed it with me as well. Enjoy your launchers, and don't forget to send us videos and photos. Have a good day.